Hello, my name is Ilya Shane, and today I will be talking to you about EMR, EHR, and PHR systems and their impact on the healthcare space. Now, before we dive in, since we're going to be using these terms a lot throughout the presentation, I just want to clarify that EMR stands for Electronic Medical Record, EHR stands for Electronic Health Record, and PHR stands for Personal Health Record. For the agenda today, I will first provide an overview of the functions of these systems in healthcare and a brief timeline on how they came to be. Then I will break down EMRs, EHRs, and PHRs, how they differ from one another, and how they are connected. Next, I will discuss implementation and design of the systems and how they are customized for different facilities and providers. And finally, we will cover current challenges with these systems, as well as what the future holds and how these challenges will be addressed. I will wrap it up with some questions that will hopefully lead to an insightful and constructive discussion. With that said, let's get started. Essentially, EMR and EHR systems were developed to replace paper medical records that capture diagnoses, treatment, prescription, and other medical history and data for patients. Although there are some challenges and issues with these systems, which we will discuss in more detail later in the presentation, they are, at least to some degree, part of day-to-day operations of the majority of the medical practices today. Providers and medical facilities use these systems to gather and manage patient data, which allows them to make better and quicker decisions, deliver more personalized care to the patients, improve overall health outcomes, and lower readmission rates, as well as streamline internal processes that make them more cost efficient. As a result, this space has become very competitive. There are currently over 600 vendors for these types of systems, with a few major players, as well as countless developers that offer providers customized systems built from scratch. So where did this all begin? The concept of the EMR was presented in the late 1960s by Dr. Larry Weed as a way to record patient information in an electronic form so it can be reviewed by third parties and efficiently stored. In turn, the first EMR was developed in 1972 at the Regenstrief Institute and was seen as a major breakthrough in healthcare. However, this EMR was almost exclusively used by government hospitals due to its high costs. In the 1990s, the use of EMR systems in inpatient and outpatient facilities became more and more common with advances, accessibility, and affordability of personal computers, image scanners, and local area networks. In 2004, President George W. Bush signed an executive order to oversee the development of health information technology infrastructure, focusing primarily on EMRs and EHRs. In 2016, the U.S. government rolled out an EHR implementation incentive program that offered benefits to providers who utilized these systems, which was undeniably effective and successful, given that as of last year, 89% of physicians reported using an EMR or EHR system within their practice. The material increase in use of these systems is further illustrated in the graph on the right. The EHR market was an estimated $30 billion as of last year and forecasted to grow to $40 billion by 2025. Now that you've seen the big picture and a little history, let's dive into the details. As shown in the table on the left, the major difference between EMRs and EHRs is that the data in an EMR is not as expansive and not as easily accessible or edited by providers outside of the practice or particular department. So if, for example, a physician needs to send a patient's information for review to a specialist, let's say an endocrinologist, he would need to send the information to the specialist via email or another independent method, wait for his feedback, and make the adjustment in the records himself. This can be very tedious and time-consuming for all parties involved. It could negatively impact the treatment and well-being of the patient. EHRs are also usually integrated with PHRs to gather more comprehensive healthcare data quickly. These tethered PHRs are essentially patient portals which allow patients to input and manage their health data as well as interact with their providers. This can be very helpful for patients to track vitals and health conditions as well as progress or recovery after surgery or treatment. The provider can easily access this information and make necessary recommendations. There are also standalone PHR applications such as Health Vault and Access My Health, which allow individuals to create and maintain their own medical records as well as track their health progress, for example, weight loss. Use of these applications can be very helpful in emergencies and in general to maintain and relay medical information to providers when necessary. So how does a medical practice choose or design a system that is right for them? The answer is not a simple one, and there's almost always at least some buyer's remorse from the provider, as there's usability issues amongst others that we will discuss later. The provider must first decide whether it's best to purchase an already existing system from one of the many vendors like Epic, Cerner, or Meditech, and have it tailored to their needs and capacity as much as possible, or work with a developer to build a fully customized system from the ground up. This decision is often based on specific needs and requirements of the provider, as well as their budget and timeline. There are some essential functions and features that all EMR and EHR systems will have, as seen in the diagram on the left. They must also meet industry standards such as HIPAA with regard to security and privacy. Whether the system is custom built or from a vendor, its implementation is often time consuming and costly depending on its complexity, the size of the facility, and other factors. There will undoubtedly be some growing pains going through the steps listed on the right, with the main pain points being the transfer and migration of the data and successfully executing the training plan for providers and admin staff. As mentioned earlier, even once a system has been fully implemented, there are bound to be challenges in day-to-day use. Ultimately, the majority of the providers are dissatisfied and are looking for something newer and better. The illustration below does a good job of capturing some of the key pain points for providers when using EHR and EMR systems. It seems like the main complaint by providers is lack of usability and user-friendliness. More specifically, they often have to sort through data they don't need or is difficult to interpret, which ultimately results in having to spend more time in front of the screen than in front of patients. This time suck and lack of efficiency impacts quality of care for the patient as well as the burnout rate and overall psyche of the providers. Although the use, function, and application of these systems has grown leaps and bounds over the last 20 years and is essential to healthcare, there's still a lot of room for growth and improvement. Not only to overcome the challenges I just mentioned, but also to successfully incorporate AI, IoT, and CDS applications as advances are made in those fields as well. Access to 5G networks will lead to more patient-centric engagement with improved telehealth functionality and patient ability to interact with providers as well as manage and monitor their data. The integration of data gathered from wearable devices into these systems is also on the rise, and that trend will continue as the devices and their capabilities continue to improve. Finally, blockchain technology is likely to have an additional application outside of cryptocurrency in healthcare by using cryptography to secure EMR and EHR data. Overall, the outlook is positive and exciting for this space, and it will be very interesting to monitor the changes, advances, and progress. I hope you've enjoyed the presentation, and I'd like you to think about the following questions for the discussion this week. What AI and wearable applications do you see being integrated with EMRs, EHRs, and PHRs in the near future, and maybe 10 years from now? How will the increase in use and advancements in telehealth change the design of EMRs, EHRs, and PHRs? What, if any, ethical and privacy issues do you anticipate for patients as advancements and design changes are made? And finally, do you currently use a standalone PHR such as Health Vault? And are you more or less likely to use one after this presentation? Thanks, guys. My references are right here on the next page if you'd like to check them out. Thanks.